This week, a student was killed trying to stop a gunman inside a STEM school in Denver. Last week, a student was shot doing the same at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Two unarmed heroes, preventing an even wider, more horrific tragedy. But why should our children be risking their lives in the place where they're supposed to be learning and be safe? Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is stepping in. He signed the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas bill over 1 year after the Parkland killings. Florida's new measure will arm teachers, requiring them to undergo psychological evaluations, background checks, drug screenings, and at least 144 hours of police-style training. Does that seem reasonable? Well, not to everyone.
Because we're talking about black boys and girls who are getting murdered by police officers. There's bad police officers and there are bad teachers.
Teachers who don't want to carry guns won't have to. Why do you still oppose it if it's optional?
I certainly would not feel comfortable with some of my colleagues to take on that job without extensive training.
Joining me now is Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, and Mark Glaze, Everytown for Gun Safety's former executive director. Mark, these requirements seem pretty reasonable. Not if you don't want to carry a gun, if you don't want, you don't have to. You're not made to. But a lot of training would be required for teachers. What's the problem?
So I think the question is, does this make us and our kids more safe or less safe? And I think there's plenty of evidence to show that when you put guns in schools, almost no matter who has them, it just makes the environment less safe. Like if you just look back at the first few months of this year, I think 5 or 6 guns were discharged in schools that belong to people who are trained to use them, like school resource officers and off-duty
So
police
your point
officers.
is that no gun should ever be in a school, even if you have assailants coming in with guns?
I think it's acceptable for some schools that have chosen to do it to have like off-duty police officers who are trained in their use, but to bring more and more guns in and to expect my kid's teacher to have a shootout over his head and to be well trained to make that work well just isn't realistic.
Pam, the problem is you have these kids who are in there. I mean, I was bawling today listening to the parents of another hero in Colorado. But I think that's part of what DeSantis is responding to. Like, we obviously had Scott Peterson, the security officer who didn't go in Parkland. We understand tonight he's still getting an $8,000 a month pension. That's our reporting tonight. But what about this? A lot of people are uncomfortable. Mark cites problems with guns in schools.
Well, I've always supported this. Always supported this since Parkland. I was there at Parkland the night it happened. I was there with the families. I still talk to the families. And I've supported this because Florida is such a huge state, Laura, and we have so many rural counties, and police can't get there right away. They can't in so many of our counties. For instance, the county where I'm from, Hillsborough County, they've already opted out. They don't want their teachers to carry guns. But the counties that choose to do it, an extensive amount of training, extensive, and I think they should be treated like air marshals. You don't know who they are. The school resource officer and the staff will know who they are, and they're there if they're needed. It could have saved these kids' lives at the schools. The sad part is you're never going to take guns out of the hands of bad people, and we have to protect our kids.